Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba. The program sets out bold actions which government intends to take in order to pull the economy out of recession. Ratings agency Fitch has made its pronouncements, and it's pretty much shot down Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba's 14-point plan to revive the economy, saying that, many of these measures have previously been announced and unlikely to boost growth. Joining me now in studio is Martin Kingston, who's the Deputy President of Business Unity South Africa, BUSA. Thanks very much for joining us and welcome to the program.
Evening, Peter.
All right, so what do you think about this 14-point plan?
I think that it's a fairly comprehensive list of issues that have been identified previously, indeed, which are necessary to create the right environment to inspire confidence, because confidence is an absolutely critical ingredient to ensuring that we've got a forum for making the types of investments that will boost economic growth, and that's a fundamental requirement if we're going to address the issues that we know as a country we are confronted with of unemployment, inequality and poverty.
So Fitch are not overly impressed, kind of sharing the same sentiment as you have, but then the question is, why isn't there this implementation process?
Well, we've had not very long ago a very significant reshuffle of cabinet. The Minister of Finance, you'll have seen in the list that was published, in fact obliges many of his cabinet colleagues to an aggressive timetable of implementation. It's not within his own control. I have no doubt the Cabinet committed to it, and the President has indicated as much. But the reality is that some of these objectives are very demanding. And as Fitch has indicated, we've seen some of them articulated previously. The proof of the pudding obviously will be in the eating, and we're trying to implement these initiatives in now, I would argue, very difficult and challenging political circumstances.
Do you think we have the right people to do those jobs? Because if you are using a cricket analogy, South Africa is down. You need someone who can hit quickly, like Lance Klusener or something. Do we have the Lance Kluseners to be able to do this job quickly?
Well, that's why there's the skepticism that's been expressed so far, Peter. There's no doubt that since taking office, the Minister of Finance has learnt very quickly as to the key issues. He's engaged with all stakeholders, including business, the rating agencies, providers of debt and the like. And he and his team, and most of the Treasury team have been there from Pravin Gordhan and before, have significant experience that they can bring to bear. But as you've indicated, he needs to bring other people along with him. So when you look at the type of initiatives that are being proposed, whether that be the restructuring of state-owned enterprises, including governance, the stabilization of their balance sheets, reducing the level of support that they get from Treasury, whether that be co-opting the private sector into an infrastructure build program, whether that be maintaining fiscal discipline, all of these require other actors on the stage to be singing off the same hymn sheet. Now, what we saw, in fact, this week, not last week, was that the Minister of Minerals issued a gazette which fundamentally undermined a commitment that was made by the Minister of Finance only last week in this 14-point integrated action plan, with respect to ensuring that with respect to the mining sector there'd be appropriate levels of engagement and consultation, having seen the fallout from the gazetted mining charter, which resulted in very significant damage to confidence in the mining sector. Having suspended the mining charter, the Minister of Minerals then issued and gazetted an item that undermined all of the goodwill, I would say, that had been generated on that particular issue by the Minister of Finance only last week. So we need to have a government that speaks with a single voice and, as you indicate, is prepared to step up to the plate, or indeed the crease, and act with boldness and integrity. Now, against all of this, we have a bigger issue that I think we can't ignore, and that's the prevailing environment of scandals about corruption and mismanagement, including in the public sector, where again the Minister of Finance is going to have to step up boldly and indicate that that type of behavior will be prosecuted and will not be tolerated.
So we need a good coordinator-in-chief of cabinet, as President Thabo Mbeki suggested last week. He says that this is probably one of the biggest failings or challenges that we're facing. But it's also, someone sitting outside in the UK wants to invest, and then he hears the Reserve Bank governor saying, I don't know where the growth is going to come from. That's not an inspiring thing to hear.
Yeah, well, we are, of course, in a recession, not just a technical recession, but a real recession, and I think that that's going to continue for some time. The Reserve Bank governor only yesterday revised downwards, and significantly downwards, expectations in terms of growth, not only for this year, but for next year as well. We're all going to have to, I think, take a very long and hard look as to how we can create and stimulate meaningful growth. Meaningful growth is not 1 or 1.5%. It's 3, 4, 5% if we're going to achieve the objectives, indeed, of the National Development Plan. So you're right. Somebody who is not currently exposed to South Africa and thinking about committing for the long term will think twice before they make those types of commitments, unless and until such time as they've got visibility on policy, they've got confidence about the ability to implement that policy, and as you indicate, they are able to assure themselves that there's an adequate level of growth in the system. At the moment, those factors are not present.
So there's always this cry that business, you know, you're sitting on tons of cash and you're just not helping and coming to the party. Is it because business, A, is it true? And B, is it that business is waiting until after December to wait and see what's happening because there's just too many things that they're not certain about?
So first of all, Peter, I think that's the right question. It's not true. Business is actually investing. Whether business is investing for the longer term, until there's the clarity that I talked about before, I think is a legitimate question. And that clarity may not emerge until we have certainty as to the leadership of the ANC in December, and indeed potentially beyond that into May 2019. Now that's highly problematic because as a country we cannot afford to be on standby, paralyzed in terms of the type of decision-making and commitment of investment that is required. There's one other point I'd make in that regard, which is I think business has come to the party in a very fundamental manner. At the beginning of last year, at the request of the President indeed, alongside Pravin Gordhan, the then Minister of Finance, business and organised labour joined hands and played a pivotal role, I think, in promoting the benefits of the country and trying to stave off the downgrades that we knew were impending if we didn't have a common front. And I think it is indicative of the fact that those downgrades came immediately on the back of the reshuffle and the removal of Minister Gordhan, that we've been unable to resuscitate that level of cooperation. We have pledged and recommitted ourselves again to government to working with them in a constructive and collaborative manner, but we can only do so if government itself is internally aligned as to the approach it's going to adopt and is forceful in implementing those decisions quickly and with integrity in a manner that withstands scrutiny.
We're running out of time, but perhaps one last question. There's talk about selling off state assets to try and raise money to save SAA. And wouldn't it be quicker just to sell off parts of SAA instead of selling other assets to fund an airline that's struggling?
Well, the Minister of Finance has already indicated, and we support that, that the entire portfolio of assets need to be reviewed as to whether they serve a developmental purpose or not. Most of us would agree that SAA does not serve a developmental purpose and would be better placed in private hands than in public hands. I don't think we need to have the privatization debate currently. I think we need to ensure that state-owned enterprises are fit for purpose, and we need to define what that purpose is.
All right. Martin, we're going to have to leave it there, but always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much for your insights.
Thank you, Peter.
Great. That was Martin Kingston, Deputy President of Business Unity South Africa, BUSA. Now, let's take a look and see what happened on the markets today. It's the last day of trading for this week, and it's been generally good, actually. But let's start with the global picture and see what happened today. Asian markets, well, they closed mostly lower as the euro's been clinging to two-year highs. The Australian dollar took a bit of a knock today. European stocks closed sharply lower too after ECB comments on tapering. They're going to leave that through to autumn. In fact, the German DAX had its worst day today. In the US, they're in the midst of earnings seasons and earnings reports, and the Dow briefly falling below 100 points, falling rather 100 points as General Electric disappointed somewhat. Here at home, it wasn't a great end to the JSE week. Stocks mostly weaker at the close. The all-share index down 1/5%.